Hey everyone, it's Michael GoosebumpsFan. I hope you're doing well today. I have a book review for a book that I've been trying to get around to for so long. I wanted to save it and save it and save it, and right now, until the new release of the newest Goosebumps SlappyWorld book next month at the beginning of April, I think it's the beginning of April, that'll be the first, the last fictional book I have to read. At the current moment, this is the last of the fictional Goosebumps books I have to read, because I've reviewed everything. As many of you know, this is kind of the goal of the channel at this point. And then I have the two autobiographies from R.L. Stine and Tim Jacobus. And then I don't have anything else to really talk about aside from some other things here and there that I'll get to later in the year. But for right now, I'm going to talk about the newest Goosebumps book out there. It's from the SlappyWorld series. I forgot what number it is. They don't have it listed on the side of the book. But I think it is number 18, I believe. Yeah, I think number 18. Anyway, this book here is called Goosebumps SlappyWorld. It is a special edition as well, which essentially means it's a little bit longer than the previous books, but it's really not. Usually the SlappyWorld books have been somewhere between 140 pages to 160, typically closer to 160 though. This is no different. This one is right at like 165, 170, somewhere in there. And first and foremost, I love the cover, and I love all of the things on the inside of this book. There's so many things to talk about with this, but look at this cover, man. Have you seen this? You can only buy it in a hardcover, by the way. But I love this. It is so nice. Very 1990s with the little ahas written everywhere. Very cool. So you open up the book, and the first thing you see on the inside of the book, the first couple of inserts, I guess, on the other side of the cover, are these little Slappy heads, and they all have different mouths and expressions and all that stuff. Very, very cool. Really enjoyed that as well. You open up the book, since this came out last year in 2022, you open up the book with an actual introduction from R.L. Stine to tell you, hey, this is the 30th anniversary of Goosebumps, again in 2022, not this year in 2023. That was very quaint and very nice. I really enjoyed that. I had a good time reading that from Mr. Stine himself, who I admire a lot. One of my biggest influences on my writing ever have been him and Alvin Schwartz and Stephen King. And I love the guy. I love the guy so much. And this whole intro, it was short, but it was sweet. It was very nice. Now, there's some bonus features in the back of the book I'll talk about in a little bit, but I mainly want to start off talking about the book itself, the story, or stories, depending on how you view this book, basically. Essentially, we have a prologue that's like 20 or so pages long about the sorcerer who created Slappy 200 years ago. Yeah, we actually go back to that. His name is Darkwell. We go back to a village that he and his, I think it's nephew, are hanging out in and hiding out in. And the village starts to get sick of his sorcery, his evil. He brings puppets to life that he builds, and he apparently just finished up building Slappy. We get to watch what happens when he and the villagers have a confrontation. You know, it's pretty bad. There's some pretty shock value body horror stuff in that particular part of the book. I like it. But that's just a prologue. And it's kind of a short story in its own regard. Kind of like the beginning of Wanted the Haunted Mask, one of my favorite Goosebumps books of all time. And then I noticed something. We have about 4 parts to this book. Part 1 is the prologue. Then you have like part 2, part 3, and part 4 that are not really the exact same thing over and over again. They're not really one consistent story. No, what they actually did here, what Stine actually did here, that I kind of thought was kind of different, was that this is kind of a short story collection that's loosely tied together, very loosely, but nonetheless, each chapter is kind of a short story. Now, part 3 and 4 kind of connect more than the rest, but they're all loosely tied together, really. And that kind of surprised me. I didn't really go into this knowing that, or hearing anybody say anything about that in the comment sections of any of my videos where people have talked about Slappy Beware. I did not expect what I was getting with this book, but I really liked it. It was a good Slappy book. If this happens to be the last one ever released, I would be very sad, but I would also be very happy with what I got here. It's a good read, it's a fun read, and most of it is your typical Slappy fare of Slappy being bought. There's actually some really cool references to the original Night of the Living Dummy that I think a lot of you guys would love too. A particular character in Dummy history is brought back for this, and I thought that was great. I thought that was a really great throwback. Essentially, the book starts off when we get to modern day with a fella named Reggie, and this is really where our main story kind of takes place. Or the first of the 4 short stories, really, that are in modern day. after the prologue. So essentially there's a fellow named Reggie who is into ventriloquist stuff. I think he has a dummy named Junior, I believe. I think is his name. And he has a little sister who likes to be just like him, and she kind of has a fail up on stage in front of an audience at a talent show type of thing, doing something else. And for Christmas in Florida, she happens to want a ventriloquist dummy of her own. And she gets one from her parents that she talked about a lot. This one is interesting. It's called a Mr. Wood dummy. Yeah, do you remember that name? That's the dummy I was talking about. Mr. Wood dummy makes an appearance in here. But it turns out the Mr. Wood that she got in her box was Slappy. And things go horribly, horribly wrong. And it is very fun. If you love dummy books, if you love Slappy books, if you love SlappyWorld books that are focused on Slappy, this is very much for you. It's not really written in the way that you have the typical SlappyWorld books of having like an intro and a beginning and, an ending, with Slappy commenting on what happened in the story in between the book's chapters. It's nothing like that. They don't do that here, which I thought was kind of odd to have it be a SlappyWorld book, but it is a SlappyWorld release, plain and simple. I really had a good time. Again, if this is the final ever Slappy book we ever get from Mr. Stein while he's alive, I would be sad on the one hand because we have 3 more Goosebumps books that have officially been announced. Basically, we have 2 more SlappyWorld books this year, and then at the end of the year, we have a brand new Goosebumps series starting up called House of Shivers. And so far, there are no Slappy books coming out this year. But this one was really solid. I really had a good time. For it to be kind of more of a short story collection, a lot of people aren't going to be liking that. A lot of you kids out there who love Slappy, you're not going to care. You really won't. But to me, I enjoyed it a lot. It's not the strongest ever Slappy book. It is not a Night of the Living Dummy 2 or 3. It is not. It's very, very reminiscent in one of the chapters, one of the parts of the book, about Slappy's Nightmare, the old Series 2000 book, if you've ever heard of that. It's very similar to that in a lot of ways throughout this book, mainly in the final couple of chapters, or final couple of parts, the other half of the book. If you love Slappy's Nightmare, I think you'll like a lot of this book, because it's very, very, very much like a retelling of that. Not a retelling, but like a retooling, if you want to call it that. It's very much like that in a lot of ways. That's going to be for the right people, I think, who love Slappy's Nightmare more than I do. I like that book. It has some good stuff to it. This is not as dark as that book, but it has its moments. There's some really great Slappy hijinks in this book, the kind of pranks he pulls on people. One of the big things that's done here that I think we've covered this in the past in old Slappy books a long time ago, maybe Slappy's Nightmare, was the idea that Slappy has to scare a person every single day or he'll go to sleep forever. And I think there was a book that I read that had some kind of premise like that or had an idea like that. That is carried through from the prologue of this book with Darkwell the Sorcerer all the way to the end of the book. Slappy has to try to do evil things to scare people every single day to stay alive. It's kind of cool. I like it. It's fun. It's enjoyable. I feel like I'm missing something I wanted to talk about. Oh, we have illustrations. I do want to show you that. There's not illustrations for every single chapter, but every single new part of the book out of the 4 have a new picture that are beautiful. I don't know if Dorman did this or somebody else did this, but man, look at the detailing on this. The fire on the house in the village. This is from the prologue. The detailing on the back of the heads of these guys, the villagers. It's very nice. Look at the picture of Slappy being held by Darkwell. I didn't know this had illustrations, and I was very surprised by how beautiful those illustrations are, especially the last couple in the book. Really, really good work, guys. I don't know who did this or anything. Everybody, Stein, Dorman, everyone involved with this book. Really good content, man. I really enjoyed this. And again, it's a special edition, so it feels to me like an actual special book. When you have a special edition, they should have something really unique about them. For me, this is a very unique book. Kind of like One of the Haunted Mask, kind of like the Most Wanted special editions you had back in the day. This is very nice. I really, really enjoy how well put together this book is. Now, like I said, the back of the book, even though the story itself is not the strongest thing ever, I enjoyed it. I thought it was well made. I thought it was well crafted, and I enjoyed the Darkwell stuff that was in here as well. Slappy's hijinks, that short story kind of way of telling this tale. I really loved all of that. I had a really good time with all of that. It was fine. It was above average, for sure, in my personal opinion. I'm a typical Slappy fan. I'm a typical ventriloquist dummy fan in general. Have been since I was a kid. And I will tell you, I really, really, really dug this. I thought it was really fun, really enjoyable. And I think for a Slappy book, if you like Slappy, you'll really love it. If you're not a fan of Slappy or not really a hardcore fan of Slappy, this is not going to convert you, story-wise. It will not convert you into a massive fan. But it's good. It's a special edition of a special character for a special series that I think the right people are going to love. I really do believe that. Now, the book itself, in the back of the book, has some cool stuff as just kind of bonus stuff for about 15 pages, maybe 10, somewhere in there. And I thought these were kind of nice. Some of them I remember in the first section of this book. I remember reading some of these in previous entries. Maybe they're just made up off the top of Stein's head for this book. I don't know. But the first section of the 3 different kinds of things for about 5 or 6 pages in the back of the book are Slappy's most iconic insults, which I swear to God some of these I read in previous books. Some of them I swear I haven't. The second section is called Jokes on You. It's basically like Slappy's favorite jokes. Not just like in the books that he's told, but just favorite jokes of all time. Those are okay. You know, it's about as iconic as the Slappy's most iconic insults thing. The final part of this is kind of neat. It's a interview with a dummy, is what it's called. And it's R.L. Stine interviewing Slappy. It's like 5 pages long. It's kind of cute. It's kind of just your typical SlappyWorld fare of R.L. Stine and Slappy discussing something. Mainly with Slappy making jokes about everything that Stine says. It's supposed to be witty banter. It kind of isn't, but it's there. You know? But I appreciate it. I think a lot of kids would read that and really, really love it. It kind of does what Toy Story does about making you think you leave the room and your toys start playing and getting up and hanging out and talking and stuff. It's kind of like that. Like kids think, oh, Slappy exists. You know, it's kind of cute. I kind of dig it just a little bit because it reminds me of when I was a kid. Anyway, with all that being said, what did you guys think about Goosebumps SlappyWorld Special Edition, Slappy Beware? Did you love this book? Did you hate this book? I would love to hear what you have to say about it down in the comment section down below. For me personally, I think a brand new copy of this is worth every dollar, every cent that you spend on it. I think that it's a good read. I think it was a fun read. And to have a nice hardcover for the SlappyWorld books, really cool. I really dig that a lot. To have a new Slappy book that we haven't had in a while, I really like it a lot. I think it's really good for what it is. The last couple of SlappyWorld books have been kind of disappointing to me. And this one, for me, really stuck out. I really liked it a lot for what it was, being a Slappy fan. But again, I do acknowledge it is a little weak. It just is. It's kind of a shame, but it's true. If I had to rate this one on a 5-star basis, for me personally, this might change in the future, but for me personally, right now, I would give it a 4 out of 5 stars. I really like it a lot. I think it's a good read, and I think it was fun. Just in general, it was fun to read and just kind of watch Slappy do things. I enjoy that all the time. But this is a good one. Having the throwbacks to things like Mr. Wood and Darkwell the Sorcerer, those kinds of things really brought this together for me as a fan, and I think it will for you too if you love that kind of thing. There's some really cool stuff in here if you're a big Dummy fan from back in the day, or more recently. There's some really cool stuff in here I think you'll like. But anyway, 4 out of 5 stars for me. I really like the book a lot, and I recommend it to the right people. Again, if you're not a Slappy fan, this is not for you. Anyway, have you read it? What do you think about it? I'd love to hear what you all have to say down in the comment section down below again. And next week, probably not this week. I'm going to try, but probably not this week. More than likely, either on this coming weekend or next week, you will see reviews for the 2 autobiographies. My Life as a Writer, or My Life in Ohio. I don't know what the titles of the books are called. The Stein and Tim Jacobus autobiographies I mentioned earlier will probably be reviewed next week. I can't promise I can get to them this week just because of how crazy work has been. As you can tell, it's Wednesday. I haven't uploaded anything for you guys the last 2 days. I usually been uploading Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, every day of the week until Saturday and Sunday and taking a break to try to wrap up the channel's book stuff. But I don't think any of us are in a rush for this to end. So it's probably going to have to happen next week where I get those final reviews out. I don't want to guarantee that because I might be able to get at least one out this week. But with all that being said, I want to thank you guys for being here. That is for right now until the new book releases in April. The final review of every fictional book from Goosebumps on my channel. They're all done. I've reviewed every single one of them. So anyway, with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this one. I hope you enjoyed the review, and I hope you'll let me know all your thoughts and comments down below about SlappyWorld, about your favorite, your least favorite. By the way, that being said, this is one of my more favorite of the SlappyWorld books. I think the ending isn't bad like a lot of the SlappyWorld books have had. For me personally, I actually enjoyed it a lot. I think it had a lot to do, and it was fun. It was satisfying, to a degree. and kind of silly, but kind of satisfying to me, in my taste. Anyway, a lot of the time I've been disappointed with recent ones, and the endings of them. But this one, not so much. It was a good one. Anyway, what do you think about it? Put your thoughts and comments down below. Again, God bless you guys. Have a good week, and goodbye.